I consider myself a feminist, but then I take this book and I'm like, what is this? Hi everyone, this is Mary, you're Mary Reads. Welcome or welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to talk about two books that I've recently read, and I wanted to give a short review of each one of them and then discuss feminism in these two books. Just see how the author shows it in the book, how the author shows it through the character. And I will kind of give you my ideas of why I think it works or why it doesn't work and what I kind of feel closer to. So the books we're going to be discussing today is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte and Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. Let's start with a short review just to kind of give you an idea of how I felt about each one of the books. Bonnie Garmus's Lessons in Chemistry, I gave 3 stars out of 5. Jane Eyre, I gave 5 stars out of 5. And you can say, yeah, it's classics. Of course, you're leaning towards Jane Eyre, you're biased. And maybe I am. I do love classics. But it just felt different. It felt deep. It felt real. I believed in it. Bonnie Garmus really didn't do anything for me. She just spilled her thoughts, and I didn't feel connected emotionally to the character at all. So let's begin with Lessons in Chemistry. This is a story that is set in 50s or 60s US, and our main character, Elizabeth Zott, is a chemist who works at a lab, and after certain events happen in her life, she ends up alone with a kid. And she's invited to host a cooking show. So she becomes a TV star. And we follow her through her journey, starting from the chemistry lab and into her becoming a TV show host. And I was fascinated with the idea of the story. Basically, if you want to compare it to something, see it as a story of Beth Ann from the first season of Why Women Kill. Basically a very similar story, a very similar vibe, a very similar time. And I was super excited because for me, this was like, imagine if Beth Ann decided to build her career and build her professional reputation. This basically would be what this book is. And I was like, oh my God, this is so wonderful. And we're going to discuss the questions of feminism in this book, which I, again, am interested in, if done nicely. And then I opened this book and it's such a huge disappointment. We'll get into that a little bit later. And now let's talk about Jane Eyre. I absolutely adored this story. The first time I read it, I was very young. It was like 13 years ago. And for me, that novel was always gloomy, dark, sad, very gothic. But I read it this time. It still is gothic-ish for me, but definitely not as gothic as Wuthering Heights, but it's kind of there. It's on the same shelf. But this is a story about a young girl, Jane, who is raised by her aunt. Her uncle, who was her mom's brother, passed away, and she's left with her aunt and her kids, 2 daughters and a son. And they all hate little Jane because, well, her aunt is not connected to her by blood, so why would she ever love her? Her cousins are being very mean to her, like kids can sometimes be, especially her cousin who is a boy. And she is eventually sent to a boarding school where she finds friends, where she begins to understand what she likes, who she is as a person. And we follow her through her adult years as well, through her early 20s. And we see how her life unfolds. She is a teacher, first at a boarding school where she studied, then she moves to a family where she meets her love interest. So this is a very quick overview if you haven't read one or both of these books. And now let's dig into feminism. Why did I have so many problems with Lessons in Chemistry? They're going to be the base here. So this book, as I said before, is supposed to be about a woman's strength. She's raising a daughter on her own. She's building a career. She wants to be on the same level as men professionally, first of all, and she deserves it. She very much deserves it. She's a great chemist. She is a very smart woman. She helps her colleagues a lot, her male colleagues. And I felt like this is a great idea for the book. You're covering those years when women still don't have as much power, as much rights as they have today. And you're showing a woman who's going against it. So wonderful, very exciting, perfect. Sounds like a perfect read. It was on my shelves for years. I was so excited to read it. And this was really not a good book from the point of view of feminism, in my view, in my opinion. First of all, it's the way that Elizabeth is shown. She's extremely annoying, and I will explain why. The author is trying to make us think that she's such a free thinker, that she is open to discussing anything, that she is open about her beliefs, about her ideas, and this is wonderful. But there are social norms that you should keep in mind when you talk to people, especially people who you have just recently met. And Elizabeth decides to talk about her sexual life with her boyfriend. She does not want to get married to a man who she has seen twice in her life, who is a producer of the show that she's going to be on. And again, the author is trying to make me think that this is feminism, that she's allowed to say what she wants, that she's allowed to believe what she wants, and I'm fine with that. Okay. But nobody said that saying what you want means neglecting all the social norms that exist. This is not just a woman thing that you're not allowed to say something. No, men also should not be discussing their sexual life in front of people who they just met. And Elizabeth completely erases those boundaries, and it seems like she's either doing this on purpose to make everybody around her uncomfortable, and we know that the man she's talking to is very uncomfortable, clearly, like we see it through the book, or she's so emotionally unintelligent that she's unable to understand the norms. And I don't think that's the case. So that, in my point of view, is not feminism. That is neglecting all the social norms and actually being kind of rude. That is not, you should not be listening to somebody else's sex life, especially when you just meet them. If it's your best friend, if it's your sister and you're super open with her and super close, okay, fine, in certain cases, even if it's your parent, you talk about that, that's fine. But if it's a person who you meet the second time in your life, if this is your basically boss, why are you doing this? This is not feministic. This is stupid and rude. And since we are on the topic of the TV show, let me make another point that for me was not feministic, was actually super annoying. She completely neglects what she needs to do for her job. So basically, she is a cooking show host, which is great, wonderful. And obviously, there is a kitchen set up for her. And the kitchen is done a certain way, like there is a clock, there is, let's say, a vase with flowers, the kitchen is these bright, inviting colors. And she says, I'm not gonna cook on this kitchen. This is completely horrible. Why are women shown as the creatures that need the kitchen to look like this? My kitchen doesn't look like this. My kitchen looks like a lab. And I make coffee, not in a regular coffee pot, but I make it as a chemist, and I make it in these special tubes and stuff that you use for chemistry. And I somewhat agree. There is a scene where her boss wants her to wear a dress, and she says, no, why would I wear a dress? Pants are so much more comfortable, especially when I'm in the kitchen, and I have to turn this way and that way, and I would much rather be in pants. That's completely fine. I understand her there. And here, yes, this is a very good example of healthy feminism. When she starts saying, I'm not going to cook on this kitchen, this is stupid, I'm not going to use these appliances, I have my own appliances that I took from my chemistry lab, I'm not going to just do anything that you tell me to do. And what they tell her to do is not anything crazy. It's like, okay, smile to a camera, explain what you're doing, use words that people are going to understand because they're going to be cooking. I get that. This is not about feminism. This is about a job and what it requires from you. This is about professionalism. Is it stupid that marketing works a certain way and they're trying to use bright colors, they're trying to use a lot of details, they're trying to make everything like super attractive, the picture should be very pretty. Is it annoying? Yes, and I get it. But that's something that people buy, that's something that people want to watch, and that's what they will watch. It's like with YouTube. It's not 100% about content. A lot of it is very much about the sound. A lot of it is very much about the picture. A lot of it is very much about how you look. You don't come on YouTube in pajamas because, again, there's certain professionalism. And this is the question of professionalism, not feminism. When it comes to what she's wearing, I get it. That's fine. I would agree with her wearing pants rather than wearing dresses. But this, no. The way the kitchen looks, the way that you address the audience, this is professionalism. And if you're refusing to do your job, well, then don't do it. Then why are you here? And now that we've asked a question of why are you here, let's discuss why. So basically, she is not being respected at her job. And I think this is actually what happened to the author. And she's kind of writing based off of her own story. Maybe that's why it sounds so personal and slightly aggressive somewhat. But basically, Elizabeth is not respected at her company. Other workers, mostly men, use her and then they take all the credit. And what's more, she doesn't have a PhD. And that is because she was assaulted in her university when she was getting her degree, and she was thrown out because the administration decided that it's easier to just throw her out than blame the professor and get into all of that conflict. That is absolutely horrible. That is something that unfortunately still happens, and that probably used to happen more before. And this is an absolute insanity to me. And the way she's not respected by her colleagues, I also am very furious about. And that is why she leaves. But the problem we start facing is that every character in the book, her colleagues, both men and women, the professor that we talked about before, another woman's professor, even her boyfriend, who she doesn't want to marry because she doesn't want to take his last name. Okay, fine, let's put that aside. That's your personal choice, whatever. But every single character is bad in the sense that every single character is not feministic because they don't know how to be, or they're against feminism because feminism doesn't give them any perks. Basically, Elizabeth is the only good character. She's this only saint, almost woman who understands what feminism is and how important it is. And at this point, I stop believing the story. I start thinking that the author was just very angry at her own personal experience. She spills it into the book. And she, being basically Elizabeth's prototype, wants to show how strong, how great she is, and how smart she is, and how everybody else is lower than her. I'm sorry, I don't get that. I stop believing in the story. I don't believe that there is not even one character that is also a feminist, that understands the importance of it, and that supports Elizabeth in her ideas. This is not realistic. And again, I understand you can say, oh, but we're talking about the 60s. Still, no. You should have at least one good character who understands her, because now it's like Elizabeth against the whole world, and she's this only eye-opening woman, basically like a prophet. This is so not realistic. And there are other things that annoyed me. For example, the way Elizabeth treats her daughter, how her daughter at 4 years old is reading Kant and Nietzsche, and how she wants to read Bulgakov and Tolstoy. This is just not realistic. I don't know why the author thought that it's a good idea to put that in. And basically, in the end of the day, you have a horrible world, and then in the end fairy godmother appears and everything is good and wonderful and rainbows everywhere. So the book had a lot of problems that I felt like made the book worse. There were good moments and there were good examples of feminism, but the big problem that I saw is that the author wanted us so badly to believe that she's feministic, that Elizabeth is a feminist, that you stop believing it. And she also decides to talk about so many social issues that it's just overloading. You don't know what to grasp at. You are just lost in this soup of issues that the author makes you eat, and you constantly feel like you're being told off, like you're a silly kid who doesn't understand anything, and the author is just telling you, you're wrong, you need to learn this, and you need to learn that, you need to be like Elizabeth. We talk about feminism, we talk about religion, we talk about your identity and body positivity. That's just too much. That's overloading. That makes the story less believable. And to me, Jane Eyre had more feminism in it than Lessons in Chemistry. Now let's talk about Jane Eyre in comparison. Is it the most feministic book I've ever read? Far from it, very far from it, especially considering it was written, 200 years ago, and we are clearly not at the position to talk about feminism the way we talk about it now. But I felt like Jane's ideas were these roots of feminism that make a lot of sense, rather than all of those fancy shenanigans and leaves that Bonnie Garmus gives us. So why is Jane a feminist? In general, Jane Eyre is considered one of the first feminist novels. And I can clearly see why. First of all, right from her childhood, right from the beginning, Jane lives with a lot of unfairness. Her cousin, a boy, is very mean to her. And completely without a reason, Jane doesn't do anything to him. He just, because he's a boy, because he's stronger, because he's older, he thinks he can do this to her. And his mom, Jane's aunt, is of course completely in love with her son. He is the best to her. He's a boy. He's a pride of the family. And who cares about Jane, whose parents died, and she is just not my blood. I don't care about her. So we start seeing this injustice from the beginning, and Jane right away tells her cousin, why are you doing this to me? What did I do to you? She has this very deeply sitting idea that she is a human being. She is worthy just because she exists. And it doesn't matter if she's a girl, if she's a boy, and who her parents are. This is just this very deeply rooted belief that people are equal. Another sign of feminism that I see here is the way she builds her life on her own. She never once says, oh, I'm gonna marry a rich man and I'm going to get all the money there. Or I'm gonna see if I have a rich relative and I will inherit the money. No, she knows that she has to work and she is fine doing that because she respects herself when she builds her life. She is a teacher, she is a governess, and is this the best position in the world that pays her the most? No. But it's a decent job which brings her decent income, and she knows that she earned that money herself. She does not need anybody's help. She is completely self-sufficient. And this is what we see throughout the whole book. When she falls in love, she does not want to lose herself in this love. She does not let Mr. Rochester kiss her a lot and sit with her for a long time talking until it's late at night, because she knows that she has a job to do in the morning, because she knows that they're not married and I'm not going to spend all of my time and fully connect myself to someone who is not my husband. And with spoilers, if you haven't read the book, you don't have to watch this part. But once she finds out that Mr. Rochester has a wife who is still alive, and that Mr. Rochester is still married, he's not divorced, she leaves. Not because she doesn't love him, not because she thinks that he is an absolutely horrible human being. She loves him very much. Being with him is one of the most important things for her. She doesn't want to lose him. Not because she's weak, not because he has money, but because she loves him and she wants to be with a man she loves. But she knows that this is indecent. She does not want to be a lover. She could be. It would be fine. He wanted her to stay, and who would find out? But she herself would know that this is not what I want. This is not who I want to be. I want to be a wife. I don't want to be someone's mistress, someone's lover. I want to be a wife. And this for me was a huge sign of real feminism. Just knowing your worth and not agreeing to something less than that, no matter the circumstances. And then later, another man, her cousin, not the one she grew up with, a different cousin, proposes to her. And he proposes to her not because he loves her, but because he wants her to be with him when he goes on his religious trips to India and other countries. So basically, he wants her to be his assistant. And he thinks it indecent for her to go as his cousin. They're not in any way involved. It would be weird that she is spending all of her time with him instead of having her own family. So he says, marry me and we will do this. I don't love you. I actually don't think that you're even pretty. And in the book, multiple times we're told that Jane is not pretty. And which I'm sure she is, but we are told that she's not pretty. So let's just imagine that she's not a very beautiful woman. And that's kind of what her portrait is, because a lot is rooted in it. So he says, you're not pretty. I don't think you were born for a family, for a marriage where love is the reason for marrying. But I think that you would make a great companion and you would help me do what I want to do. You would be a good asset to me. And she says, okay, maybe I'm not pretty. Maybe, considering what happened to me with Mr. Rochester, I'm never going to marry because he's married and I don't love anybody else. I don't want to be with anybody else. Yes, maybe I'm not going to marry. Yes, maybe I'm never going to have a family of my own. But I'm not going to marry a person who doesn't love me, who only needs me for something for his own purposes, no matter how grand these purposes might be. And this, for me, is what real feminism is about. It's about self-worth. And there is a paragraph that I want to read. I unfortunately could not read anything from Lessons in Chemistry just because I gave the book away to the library. And with classics, it's easier to find certain sentences, certain paragraphs. So there are a couple of the ones that I want to read to you. The first one is, women are supposed to be very calm generally, but women feel just as men feel. They need exercise for their faculties and a field for their efforts as much as their brothers do. So basically, women are the same as men. They are also human beings with their desires, with their flaws, with their beliefs, and they have the same right as a man does to express emotions, to do certain things, to say no to certain things, or to say yes to certain things. So in this one sentence, for me, is the whole essence of Jane Eyre. And then another sentence that she said, which I also think is going to be very relevant here, is, I'm no bird and no net ensnares me. I am a free human being with an independent will. Basically, very similar to the first sentence that I read. I'm a human being. I have a free will. I want certain things, and I'm not going to agree to anything less. So just to conclude this whole monologue, I don't think that Lessons in Chemistry is bad. I don't think that Jane Eyre is the most feministic book on earth. But I do feel like here we have an example of the roots, the very foundational thing that doesn't break. And then we have these leaves that make the tree very pretty, that we look at when we first see a tree, but which fall every autumn and we lose all of that. So what I mean is, I feel like Jane Eyre is the real root of what feminism was initially meant to be and what feminism is about, rather than these leaves, these very pretty examples, these very weird beliefs that are coming out from actual feminism that it was supposed to be like. So let me know what you think about it. Do you agree with my opinion, or do you think differently? Did you enjoy Lessons in Chemistry? And if you've read Jane Eyre, what do you think about feminism in Lessons in Chemistry versus Jane Eyre? Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like it and subscribe to my channel not to miss any future videos, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.